Well, hello and welcome to the Argus Hydrogen and Future Fuels podcast. I'm joined today by Martin Carolan. He's the MD and CEO at Provaris. Martin, welcome.
Thanks, Tim.
So, Martin, just for the benefits of people who don't know you, who are Provaris and what are you doing in hydrogen?
Yeah, so Provaris Energy is an Australian publicly listed company. We are a developer of low-cost, simple and energy-efficient hydrogen supply chains, and we focus on regional markets. So regional being the context of the continental Europe, and then again we look at the markets of Southeast Asia coming from Australia up into Asia. So the core to our offering is our advanced development of a unique and proprietary shipping solution, and we use the technology of a carrier being compression versus what alternatives you may have seen in the part around being liquefaction, the liquid organics, or even derivatives such as methanol or ammonia.
Good. So when we talk about transportation, it's ammonia that's mostly raised, followed by LOHCs if we're talking about vectors, or if it's pure hydrogen, it's kind of liquid hydrogen and pipelines. And compression rarely gets discussed. People understand that liquefaction increases density, and we talk about reducing costs that way. So why are Provaris looking at a compression solution?
We have, as a company, we are project developers with LNG and shipping and various different disciplines, but the company has, prior to 2019, had been focused on compressed natural gas as an integrated shipping solution. So there are people in our organisation with 30 years of experience around defining new pressure vessels and tanks and class approvals. So that's the first point. The second point is that compression, as you know, it's a proven technology, runs around in terms of pipeline, natural gas and other chemicals and liquids, but also in the context of hydrogen, it's used as the storage and transport mechanism for onshore. So there hasn't been a precedent set where there's been a commercial gas carrier at scale in the natural gas world. So we've seen that the hydrogen economy, as it's looking to accelerate, it's looking to utilize existing technologies that have been, call it, proven. I guess if you look at ammonia as the example, it's proven to be the manageable way to move NH3 in a shipping context. But it's so compression has its, I guess the one negative, to put it out there, its energy density is seen as also something that's so low. So therefore, that would, to move the same amount of volume of energy, you need to have a lot more capital in the shipping side of things. So that's adding cost. But in actual fact, it's we'll talk about that later. But I'm sure we can demonstrate, or we have been demonstrating, that compression can actually be the lowest cost when it comes to looking at the efficiency of the full value chain.
So you bring up an interesting topic there, which is basically technology readiness level. So you've got 3 decades of experience in CNG and those kinds of things. So we know that it can be compressed. Other than it being available today, are there any other advantages that you see for using compression over some of the other modalities? Ammonia, LOHCs, liquefaction.
Yeah. We always focus on 3 key things. One is the efficiency. So we see that it's over the full life cycle from renewable generation through electrolysis and then to convert to a carrier and reconvert back to gas. If you look at the capital and operating costs and the energy use and loss over the value chain, we actually find that compression minimizes the losses, and therefore it actually has a lower cost of delivery over certain volumes and distances. The second one is flexibility. So our ability to load follow what is the renewable generation profile, which is variable. It's not base load. And so the principles of liquefaction have been developed on natural gas using base load supply of the gas. So if you are following a variable production profile of a renewable generation, it's not as simple as just converting that into a base load process. So that's the second one. The third one is simplicity. So the process enables you to remove a number of high capital and energy intensive processes in order to convert and reconvert that gaseous hydrogen X electrolyzer into a new market. So that's a number. That's probably the 3 simple processes. We can move from there.
Yeah. Let me just come back to one of those. So we talked about efficiency just then. So one of the things you were describing there is the round turn effect of, let's say, for example, converting hydrogen into another form, shipping it, and then reconverting it at the other end. And your take is that by stripping out some of these conversions, the efficiency can be somewhat improved. You talked about them being over specific volumes and distances. What are the optimal operating distances for a compressed solution, in your view?
Yeah, so in our view, in our work that we published, we have two classes of vessels. So we have what's called the H2Neo, which we look at an economic range shipping distance of 2,000 nautical miles, or roughly up to 4,000 kilometers as a round number. And then we have the H2Neo, which is a much larger capacity vessel, which is we call our second generation, which is up to 3,000 to 4,000 nautical miles. So that's first of all. So if you think about the regional market context of how hydrogen's evolving, if you looked at the markets where we're operating here up in Norway to continental Europe, it's less than 1,000 nautical miles.
Yeah.
In the context of Northern Australia to say Singapore as a key market, that's 1,800 nautical miles. So from a volume perspective, we start to come into economic ranges of around 30 to 50,000 tons per annum at the low end, and that might be a 300 to 400 megawatt scale electrolyzer project, and we run analysis up to 500,000 tons per annum. So it does scale. I mean, the efficiency question that you raised, if I could just address that again, is that one of the simple maths that we look at is the conversion efficiency. So it takes us 1.5 kilowatt hours per kilogram of hydrogen to compress and load our vessel. To liquefy, the amount of energy required is 11 kilowatt hours per kilogram. So you're already at almost a factor of 10 just by moving to the higher density process. And ammonia is somewhat similar. It's 8, 9, 10 kilowatt hours per kilogram. So that's just the commencement of the process. So that's another key element we always point to.
Yep. So just talking about two of the things you picked up there, up to 4,000 kilometers, let's say somewhere between 30 and 500,000 tons per year. Why not build a pipeline?
Yeah, so clearly, pipelines have been, proven to be a low-cost, efficient way of transporting gas and fluids. There are pipelines proposed in different parts of the European market, as an example. We've seen one announced earlier this year around offshore production of gas, looking to make blue hydrogen down to Germany, so northern, the offshore Norway. I guess we look at it in the time frame. So one, the permitting, the environmental aspects, the cost, and the execution to build offshore pipelines is not a short process. We can move through a construction of a fleet of vessels inside 2 to 3 year time frame. So that's the first thing. The flexibility that shipping offers, trying to take it from point A to point B, is a key advantage. And we've seen the emergence of shipping oil and gas all over the world continues to grow. So people are not necessarily building new pipelines. They're building things like FLNG systems and other points, right? So shipping is not a new phenomenon to oil and gas. So I'm not sure why it needs to be any different to hydrogen.
Point to point thing is important, isn't it, as well? Because it's obviously a pipeline is fixed. It really is point to point. Whereas if you're using a ship, obviously you have some optionality in terms of where you go to.
Yeah, so we've been looking at multiple locations on the west coast of Norway, for example. You're in individual bidding zones where you can access power for renewable sources at different price points. Then you've got the 3 to 4 major ports where we've now started to focus on in Germany. They're all building import facilities. So pipelines are great, but they need scale. And so the early mover of volumes and emergence of markets and downstream applications, needs to start with the shipping solution. And then I think countries like Germany are trying to focus on the H2 backbone and getting down into the industrial heartland. So shipping and ports play a key role to that.
Yeah. So a quick question. Obviously, we're talking about there's high costs involved with building an ammonia synthesis plant, and there's not light costs involved in building a liquefaction plant, and the sizing is going to be a real key question when you're doing something like that. What about Capex costs for compression solutions? How do they stack up?
again, we would argue, we could 1/10 of the cost in terms of compression. We have a continuous loading, compression, and storage process into the vessel. So we're eliminating storage at the production end as well. So we like to look at this as ship is berth connected to point where we are compressing and loading the vessel. Once that ship is full, it disconnects and it moves to the delivered end. So we definitely see points where we could be at 10% of the conversion capital required. So we are moving some of that capital into ships, but there's an optimal point of which we've discussed at different volumes and ranges where compression would lose its advantage to something like ammonia or liquefaction. But again, at the delivered end, as we've been talking about flexibility, we're actually delivering pipeline-ready gaseous H2.
Yeah.
So that's the other point. We're removing the storage element and we're connecting and discharging in 12 hours directly into pipeline.
Yep, I'm glad you brought that up. So the solution, obviously, we're discussing here, or you're discussing, is compression, but it's also the vessel angle, and then at the other end, it's delivery direct. Well, it's uncompressed into a pipeline or into storage. So just circling on two of those, the vessels. I think I've seen some discussions on some of the shipping bureaus saying that your vessels were, I think it was a while ago, approved the designs and things like that. So where are you in terms of vessel design and build? Well, let's start off with that question, actually. Where are you in terms of vessel design and build?
Yeah, it's an important question. So we received approval in principle from American Bureau of Shipping, our class society, back in 2021 for both the H2 Neo and the H2 Max. And we've chosen to then further develop the H2 Neo to feed level design. So in December last year, we received what's called design approval. So that's a fully designed vessel, which has been approved by class. And then the construction approval is subject to the development of a smaller scale prototype tank to test and prove that our layered tank construction methodology will be safe and according to classification codes. So the production test of that prototype will take place in Q1 2024. That's announced in the last couple of weeks. And then so in our ambition now is to have final class approvals that we require to then take FID on our first vessels by Q1 next year.
Okay. So once the tank tests are complete, then you're looking to go to FID on an actual vessel build. Is that right?
Yeah, and so then we're developing either our own projects in Australia. We're in collaboration with developers here in Norway, and we are talking to other third parties about the use of our solution in their projects. So it would need to be in alignment with an FID of a project, which what we've seen there are opportunities, whether they in our own portfolio or others, in 2024.
Yeah, understood. And what's the lead time on a vessel today? Is that 18 to 24 months?
Yeah, so we're if you took a mid-range tanker, for example, it's 18 to 24 months. We're adding additional time frame. Obviously, we've got the construction of the tanks and then the connection and installation inside the hull form. So we're saying 2 to 3 years at this point. So 2027 second half is our objective to be operational.
Yeah. So if all the stars align and obviously all the builds go ahead, projects are progressing, then we may see something hitting the water 2027.
That's right. So so that's to be a full-scale commercial in production, and then if there is a decision to do anything smaller scale in terms of a pilot or demonstration, that would be something that could be achieved in 25. But we plan to be operational at scale with multiple vessels late 2027.
The other thing I wanted to ask you was about storage. So we talked about, obviously, it's compression and vessels in the sort of in the prepping and loading phase, but at the other end, if it's not being injected into a into a pipeline, is storage an element of the solution that you're offering?
Yeah, that's right. So we've been asked since the early release in 21 about if you look at our what we've released in terms of the 2 tanks that sit inside the hull, could we make that available in terms of static storage in a barge format, or could you do it on shore? So we have released what we call the H2 Leo. That's received approval in principle in April 2023. That has a design capacity range of between 300 and 600 tons of hydrogen, and it's essentially a dumb barge. So it's, if you look at a vessel and you take off the propulsion on the front and the back, so you still have a storage capacity there of between 300 to 600 tons. So that could be, storage at a port location, bunkering solutions, intermittent storage. We actually use it in the front end to optimize the round trip schedule, but it could be used at the supply or the demand end. So that's the first point. We've actually done a lot of work on trying to understand the capital cost advantages. Storage is still one of the key parts of the value chain that needs to be resolved in an economic fashion. So we think that 20 to 30% of the onshore equivalent in composite tanks, the cost lands on that. The next stage of our ambition, again, we've kind of alluded to this in recent weeks, is that we think our design of tanks and the way we can construct could be single-digit or double-digit tanks used for onshore static applications again. So we're not looking to replicate the mobility solutions of containers with ISO tanks and moving around the country. We think there's an opportunity to demonstrate low-cost ways to store hydrogen using our compressed method and construction design for some onshore applications.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So what sort of size are we talking about per individual tank? Because obviously the customers that would be taking a delivery of this, they haven't got the option to switch on a pipeline.
It could be as low as 1 ton, and it could be 10 to 20 or 50 tons. And
those would be stackable in parallel, presumably.
Well, they'd be fixed to the ground. That's right. So what's a use case of that? So we've seen in mobility groups looking to roll out deployment of fueling stations, and where they need intermittent storage there, whether they're producing it locally or storage. So they have storage applications. So the ISO tank solutions in containers range between $500,000 per ton for a ton up to $1 million. So we think we can dramatically reduce the cost of that.
Yeah. So what about, I've got to ask, if we're talking about obviously the compression, the transportation over a relatively short distance, and then storage within tanks, what levels of fugitive emissions would you expect to see over, say, a voyage? And then what, crucially, would you expect to see in storage?
I'll take from a shipping perspective, so we're looking at propulsion, obviously. So the ship is currently designed to have electric drive propulsion. So it's a hybrid solution, similar to what you see in motor vehicles today. The range and capacity and capability of fuel cells for the scale of ships that we need isn't quite there yet. But we are looking at a couple of alternatives in the first generation of our vessels to have a level of fuel cell. Clearly, we have 2 large tanks that could feed hydrogen as the propulsion in the future. With respect to emissions reduction, if you look at the Red Cert 2 process, which we've done some analysis, that takes place over the full value chain. So it's not primarily focused with shipping. So the ship is being designed to be future-proof, if you will, and the first generation could be a combination of LNG, it could be methanol, it could be ammonia. So it has the capability of using the fuel which is available on that supply route, and which benefits the overall supply chain reductions to meet that Red Cert 2 proposition. But the future ideally would be if you had the efficiency and scale in fuel cells that this ship could run economically on which the hydrogen which it's carrying. But again, it's the cost of the hydrogen which needs to be put in place.
In terms of the actual fugitive emissions from the compressed hydrogen that you're transporting, do you see any significant emissions there? Because if you look at something like liquefaction, then you've got boil-off gas and all these kinds of things happening as it crosses the equator. Have you quantified that?
Yeah, so it's a closed system, and the gas is stored at 250 bar ambient temperature. So there is zero boil-off or loss.
Okay.
Nothing.
Is that the same as well for the storage, I presume?
Yes.
That's quite an advantage.
Yes. Yeah. So boil-off. So boil-off, is that the ambition of 0.2 or is it 1%? We know that if you put hydrogen at minus 253 into an existing LNG tank would burn at 5% a day. So 1% a day is where the literature has been, and let's see where they get to on their boil-off targets in what time frame.
Yeah, because it's definitely a burning platform when you're storing liquefied hydrogen. If you're losing a certain amount of it a day, it really encourages quick use.
Yeah, and I think if you do a little bit more research, just the cryogenic requirements for pipe loading, unloading. I mean, there's other factors other than just the storage tank itself.
So, where would you see the position of compression as a solution in the portfolio of, what do you say, transportation?
Yeah.
Is it a short-term opportunity while pipelines are being built out and things like recracking are being explored, etc., or is it a longer-term one?
Yeah, we see it as the longer term, and we're seeing that in the discussions we're having now with utilities in places like Europe. I think there is a view that ammonia really is the long distance carrier of choice. Yeah. Liquefaction seems to have fallen behind, and as you mentioned, LOHC is starting to have a bit more of a run. But it's the overall efficiency which we spoke about at the beginning of session, right? If you calculate the amount of energy to move from generation to electrolysis, there's a loss. If you then convert that to ammonia and then crack and purify, the losses are quite significant, say 40% in some instances. So if we can demonstrate over the same value chain and volume that we're sub 20%, plus we have the efficiencies of how we interact with the generation profile of that renewable source in terms of what we call flexibility, we are the short haul, long-term option.
Yeah.
And because, these backbone systems, whether they're OGE, whether it's Gas Uni, or whether it's people like Gasnets in Germany, that's gaseous H2 running at 60 to 70 bar pressure. So we deliver at 250. So, that we're talking about the same product.
Yeah. Well, I suppose one of the issues with some of the larger projects which tend to veer towards crossing blue water, that they are further dated. One of the things that we are seeing at the moment is it's the smaller projects that are making their way through. I remember looking at Provaris years ago when you announced the Tiwi Islands project, which is a big solar project for export. But you've been busy in Norway recently. I know you've done some stuff with Gen2 Energy and Norwegian Energy. Can you highlight some use cases that you're seeing progressing at the moment?
Yeah, so the best case is the Norwegian hydrogen example, where we have completed a pre-feasibility. It's been announced as a 270 megawatt production facility, and that's 600 nautical miles to the key ports of Germany and the Netherlands. So we think we've announced that a transport tariff of compression, storage, and transport itself is 1 to 150 per kilo. I think that the addition of H2 production makes it super competitive on a delivered basis, perhaps around $4 to $5 on a levelized cost basis.
Yeah.
So what can you sell it at? Probably the next question. So I think that is a prime example where it's 40 to 50,000 tons. There's 2 ships and a barge. It's a much more manageable capital, and you're not having to build and construct a generation at the front end. So we're shortening the development time frame, the approvals time frame, and it's a project that's far more manageable within the 26, 27 operational time frame.
Yeah, understood.
I was going to finish so quickly on Tiwi. I mean, that's as you said, it would be at the small end of the gigawatt scale projects that are proposed. So you've got more volume to sell, you've got more environmental, you've got more design and engineering. So that's why we're here in Norway trying to capture the first mover advantage up here, where the market's far more mature on the receiving end too.
Are you seeing more interest as well? Because obviously these have been announced. We know they're around. Is there more interest in the ballparks? Because I can't help but notice you're here for 2 months.
Yeah, there is absolutely, and I think it's the realization of the merits and our awareness of compression are starting to cut through, because we're advancing the maturity of our ship class approval program, and they're seeing now that through our research activity that you can actually deliver more volume at a lower price using compression.
Yeah. Finally, just as away from the ideas of compression and just a bigger look at the sector overall, FIDs in this sector have been quite slow to mature. Do you see hydrogen demand outstripping supply in 2030, which is just 6 years away? Is that a possibility?
Well, that's an excellent question. We see the demand in the short term being exceeding of a Norwegian hydrogen collaboration project, just the one Fjord H2. So we think we can do 1 million tons in the European region. Germany has a 10 million ton target by 2030 in terms of imports alone. So I think it's clear there'll be more demand than supply, I think.
That's fantastic. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us. Argus Hydrogen and Future Fuels. We'll be back.
Thanks very much.